like it. You want a podcast like it? Podcast like it's 1999. Podcast like it. Just podcast like it. Podcast like it's 1999. Podcast like it. You want a podcast like it? 1999.
Hello and welcome to Podcast Like It's 1989, the podcast where we talk about the films of 1989 from a rolling party here in 2021. I'm one of your hosts, Kenny Nybart.
And I'm Phil Iskov.
And with us today, rolling through, is our Barrett Das and Danielle Savre. Excuse me, Savory, my bad. Okay. I was working on it all morning and then I lost it. But I'm too drunk and high to even begin to get anything right, because I have been rolling through this Bernie party since I watched it last night with my son at 7:00, who said, even though it's old, it's still a lot of fun. And I would agree.
By the way, I can't dispute that. That's actually a great review by Rollins.
Yes, even though it's old, it's still a lot of fun.
I agree with that review.
I don't think I've seen Weekend at Bernie's.
Is that how he feels about you, Kenny? Do you think?
Yeah. That was good, Phil.
That was really good, Phil.
Here's the weird thing about Weekend at Bernie's. I definitely saw
weird
it
thing,
once.
Kenny?
There's a lot of weird things.
It's a personal weird thing. We can get into all the contextual weird things soon.
Yeah.
I definitely saw it once when I was a younger person. But I have seen Weekend at Bernie's 2 a dozen times.
A dozen times?
Easily. Because Weekend at Bernie's 2, for whatever reason, was the one that was always on.
That's the Joe versus the volcano of this series.
What do you mean?
The whole like island magic kind of component.
Yeah. It's got almost like a Gremlins 2 vibe, in that like it's just out the window at that point. They're just like, fuck it. Like he can now walk and dance.
And play the drums and play the bongo drums.
Barrett, that's your new whatever I'm trying to say. Like, you have to go now watch Weekend at Bernie's 2.
Yeah, now you.
I mean, apparently,
I actually would argue that Weekend at Bernie's 2 might be more fun than 1. Because it just really doesn't give a fuck. This movie is actually trying to adhere to some sense of groundedness.
It's hard to go. It's very grounded. It's very grounded.
Very grounded.
Compared to Weekend at Bernie's 2. It's very hard to go from 2 to 1 because you see all the possibilities with 2, and you start to think like they really tried too hard to adhere to what it would be like if you had to move around a dead body for a weekend.
This is true.
But I think the movie's fantastic. What do you think, Barrett? You seem to really be a fan.
I think that this is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. It's just like a catastrophe movie, which is, kind of fun, and I get it. And it's just
it is
like
a catastrophe.
It's crazy. I don't know how I feel about it. I think the goal of this podcast for you guys is going to be to sell me on watching Weekend at Bernie's 2.
Can
I? I'll just say this.
You couldn't pay me at this point to watch it.
So I texted Kenny and I was like, I don't think I liked this movie.
You texted me, don't know which is worse, this or The Burbs.
The Burbs is worse than this.
For those of you who haven't listened to our Burbs episode, we think The Burbs sucks balls.
Worse than The Burbs?
No, I don't.
So much better than The Burbs.
I wasn't sure. Here's what happened, okay, which is that I texted Kenny before the end of the movie. And then kind of by the end of the movie, it sort of got me back.
Got you a little bit. That's cute.
Because it's at a certain point, you have to really resign yourself to this movie. And if you don't, I think that then you might get annoyed with it. And I think I fought it for probably a little too long. And then at a certain point was just like, okay, I just have to get on his wavelength.
Can I
Please, yeah.
Sorry, I got cut off when I was going to say something positive, which is nice. It's that I was watching this, and from an actor's perspective, it looked like so much fun.
Oh, for sure. I bet they had a blast.
I mean, I don't know how Andrew McCarthy managed to maintain that level of just absolute mania the entire time.
Loved it. Thought he was brilliant.
I mean, yeah, like just on 20 the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
Tripping, falling, wrapping people up in cords, like just,
playing Monopoly against a dead man.
Just having the best possible time. You know.
Before we go further, yes. I do want to give Danielle her opportunity to tell us why she very clearly loves this movie. So Danielle, what is it about Bernie that really gets you going?
When you put it like that, it sounds so creepy. A movie about a dead man gets me going.
Yeah, it's also a dead man who has sex with a woman too, for the record.
I mean,
that too.
Well, rigor mortis.
Necrophilia.
Yeah. Straight up necrophilia. Yeah. Sorry, please.
I love the movie. I grew up with it. I watched it all the time. I watched Weekend at Bernie's 1 and Weekend at Bernie's 2.
Naturally.
I think out of all the podcasts we've done together at this point, you guys know that I have a love for like some really cheesy, crappy movies.
Don't couch it, own it.
I do. I love the movie, and rewatching it, I actually loved it more. Like I was like, and I think I really love it because like you're rooting. I get that it's absolutely messed up that they're like taking over this guy's house and dragging him around, and he's a dead body and the whole thing. But like,
he wanted to kill him.
I love what
he did want to kill them.
Tried to kill him.
It's totally justified. He wanted to kill them. It's, it's about two guys that just want to like do well at work and end up like getting to have a really fun, crazy, chaotic weekend. And it makes me laugh out loud. And it's not hitting me over the head with any big, this is
no, it doesn't have much to say.
Well, I agree. I disagree with you.
Funny, and I like it.
I disagree with you, Phil.
Okay.
It doesn't have a lot to say on the surface, and there's not a lot to say about the, the morals and ethics of reanimating a dead body for, the purposes of getting laid. But it does have a surprising amount of satire about this upper crust culture.
Yes.
Like the party scenes with these creepy old men hitting on these young women were really kind of sharp and really funny to me. And the whole scene that they were, that they were lampooning, even though it was kind of, background noise, was really sharp. And I think it kind of was a perfect setting for this kind of movie. You could do a movie about two guys who like Danielle said, two guys who just want to do well at work, stumble upon something, their boss dies, and they have to like make him seem alive anywhere. There's nothing about that has to be in the Hamptons, but they picked the perfect place where ludicrousness happens, and the only place where people are so drunk and self-absorbed and unaware of what's going on and willing to just assume that everything's okay so they can keep using his house. The whole fucking island used his house.
Right.
So, or I don't know if it's an island. It was the Hamptons? I can't remember. The whole Hamptons.
Hamptons Island.
Yeah,
I think.
Hamptons Island. Yes, of course. Everyone knows Hamptons Island. So that's where I summer. So I think that whether it doesn't seem like it's like some like brilliant light bulb moment for the writer and director. It does more seem like this would be a fun place to shoot a movie in a silly place, but it works perfectly.
Andrew McCarthy and Jonathan Silverman's characters want so badly to be successful and to have all this money. But then when you see Bernie has it, he's being killed by the people that, he worked with, and everyone uses him for his things and actually doesn't give two shits that he died. So
but I would say too,
he
that
may as well be dead. How about that?
He's better, it seems like, dead than alive, personally.
Yep, it certainly it seems like he's better at sexing.
There's that too. There is something, and Kenny, we've talked about this a little bit through this 89 series, but like we are in the midst of Reagan's America. There is a lot of sort of class warfare, the haves and have-nots to a certain degree. And
Reagan was gone, right? So 89, Reagan is gone, and we're living with like
the
consequences of the Reagan administration, which is this is perfect. These dumb fucks with extreme wealth.
Yeah. Can I just say this? I was watching this, and as I was in the middle of it, I'm like, this is like the whitest movie I've ever seen in my entire life. It's I mean, just in the sense that it's just so aggressively about like white male mediocrity.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And I mean, that's not what it's about. We can still sort of say like it's just like a crazy. I mean, because they make other movies like that later. I was saying to Phil before we started, like this is like Friday, but in 1989 for
with a lot of white people,
you know.
Yes, and you want to know what? It's actually like, again, unintentional, I'm sure, but a really interesting meta critique of white privilege that these dumb fucks, again, because Jonathan Silverstein and Andrew McCarthy are Silverman and Andrew McCarthy are dumb fucks, can just walk right into this world, and because they're like, clean looking white dudes, everyone's just like, yep, why not? Of course you're allowed in this party. Of course we're happy to have you here.
No consequences. Everyone's just like, but it's also totally like making fun of the fact that this guy's dead and no one seems to care, and they're talking to him like he's alive and they don't listen to him anyway. Like it's just I mean, it's silly and bizarre, and there are so many movies like this that I like totally enjoy, and I don't, it's not like, oh, I don't want to watch this because it's just blah blah blah, but like it's just so silly.
Well, there's some beauty. Well, it's like there's some beauty, I think, in what you're talking about, which is essentially the idea that like any white male body could fulfill the role that Bernie's fulfilling for everyone else there. Literally a body. You just need someone to go to sit there in the middle of the house and pretend as if it's his kingdom, and people will be like, yeah, okay, sure.
Andrew McCarthy. Literally.
Or a dead guy. I mean,
the dead guy is what I'm saying.
Well, right, no, of course.
Like literally, that's what I'm saying. Body. Literally, a dead guy is perfectly performing the function of Hampton's host.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that, or interesting, maybe more appropriately, that this film is reduced to essentially a punchline, right? When people, this movie has its legacy is it's the dead guy movie, right? It's the movie about the dead guy. And it's interesting that there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more satire going on in this film than I think people give credit to.
But Phil, I'd also say, because I hear you, but I'm so happy that Danielle chose to do this movie, because this movie, regardless of whether it's good, bad, or unintentionally good or unintentionally bad, or who the fuck knows, it has a cultural footprint, like a pretty big cultural footprint. Whether it's, some people think like it's the dead guy movie, or one of my favorite lines in the history of Friends is in the episode, my favorite episode with the game show. Question was, what's Rachel's favorite movie?
Where they lose the
apartment. What's Rachel's favorite movie? Dangerous Liaisons. What's her actual favorite movie? Weekend at Bernie's. I think there's a lot of that, where like people's actual favorite movie is Weekend at Bernie's, and it does persist in a way that like almost doesn't make sense, because the 2 stars, fizzled out. The director is not a really big guy. The writer is not a really big guy. The only thing they have is it's a dead guy movie. But there are other movies like this, like the other movie that Andrew McCarthy is in that I love, because it's my movie, like for Danielle, is Mannequin.
I was literally just going to say Mannequin is one. He was saying it's his Weekend at Bernie's. I love Mannequin.
It's the best.
Mannequin, and
stupid ass fucking premises.
It's so stupid, and I fucking love it. And we're going to talk.
It's romantic too.
It is romantic. We're talking about James Spader in Sex, Lies, and Videotape as well, and he's in Mannequin. But yeah, it's just like
that was great, Barrett. I don't know what that was.
Are you just a really big James Spader fan?
But yes.
But the thing about Mannequin that's similar to this is they're both that high concept 80s comedy that somehow works. And I don't quite know why, but it does. Like this film,
they're so stupid. It's so much fun. You feel like it's just like you can relate to one of the characters, and in the end, they get what they want. Like in the end, Andrew McCarthy got to stay at the rich guy's house, and at the end, Jonathan Silverman got the girl. And you're like, yes.
Stupid premises rule.
They do.
They rule.
Yeah.
And I, you know what? Like, I think this might be like close to Barrett's heart, but like the premise of Groundhog Day is pretty fucking stupid.
Ridiculous.
But the movie's like one of the best movies ever made because it just like you get over the premise so fast. And it's true for so many movies that we love. Deep Blue Sea is a fucking stupid premise, right? And you get over it really fast because it's like you buy the premise. In the sequels as well. A much better film with a far superior lead actor.
Far superior casting, obviously.
But it's a stupid ass premise too. And the other thing I was bemoaning, because I do so much bemoaning on this podcast, the 89 podcast.
We do.
Is I'm bemoaning the death of the stupid premise because everybody outside of people who write children's shows and children's movies and teen shows and teens movies are too fucking self-important to do stupid. And if you're going to do quote unquote stupid, you have to, I think people feel this need to be like baskets, like super high-minded about the stupidity.
Right.
And can't you just like have a good time?
I mean, this movie has a good time. Like, this movie is infectiously silly. And I really think that, part of it is in the casting. I think the two leads are great. Oh, are you?
No. Well, I heard that John Cryer was originally supposed to be Andrew McCarthy, and I'm so happy it was Andrew McCarthy and not John Cryer. As much as I love John Cryer, I just could not imagine anyone else playing this part from those rooftop scenes where he's like stepping in the tar.
I was just gonna say that rooftop pool party, I put quotation marks, is fantastic.
He's a 10 out of 10.
How do you feel being from New York? That was that just?
I fully identified with that. I've been on that.
I have too.
Like, I felt that got me. Like, I think I started in a place where I was like, I'm in with this movie because I've never seen it, but I've heard, obviously it's in the cultural zeitgeist for literally my entire life. And so like, as I guess I lost some momentum as the movie went on, but when it started, I was like, I love this. It felt very New York. And then it got sort of like, and sort of that rat race, ridiculous, whatever. But real quick, to go back one step to like the other movies that when I was, I rented this or bought this or whatever on Amazon Prime last night, and I started watching it. And when it gave me the movies, like, I might recommend.
Yep.
I saw so many, like What About Bob is one of the movies I grew up with.
Great.
Loved. Yep. Like I watched it all the time as like a kid with my family. And like, that is the absurd, early 90s, late 80s movie that I grew up with and loved. And like, did I have any personal connection to it other than needing therapy? No, but like, it's sort of like a New York goes on vacation and like hilarity ensues kind of movie that I really connected with. And like, so I totally understand the like nostalgia and adoration of these like totally ridiculous premises.
Yeah, I was surprised, quite honestly, that there was as much plot in this movie as there was to a certain degree. Like, I was surprised. All I knew of this movie was it's the movie with the dead guy, and I probably had seen clips here and there over the years, but I never sat down to watch the film. I was surprised it takes almost 40 minutes for Bernie to die.
Yeah, me too.
I expected it to happen way sooner.
Yeah, I was like, Bernie's got to die early, right? And instead, there's this whole sort of organized crime component to this film, which I was surprised at. Also, insurance fraud, which I was also surprised. There was moving parts to the plot of this film when I really just thought it was a guy that they use as a puppet dead guy for 90 minutes.
If you break down the plot, up to the 40-minute mark when he dies, it's a thriller.
Yeah.
It's it's a pretty good thriller too. That's a scene you don't see a lot in movies, which like you have to have for this movie. But where I loved it because it was so unexpected. Where he sits with the three gangsters, he's sleeping with one of the gangsters' girlfriends. He says, "This is what I think we should do. I think we should kill these two shitheads. Look at it, and make it a murder suicide." They're like, "Great, Bertie, whatever you want, Bertie." He leaves. They go, "Let's kill that guy." Great, cool, love it. Because like I couldn't remember what happened. Like I figured like they screwed up, they killed Bernie, or Bernie had a heart attack. Like I had no fucking recollection of how this dude died. So I think that stuff is fun. I think it was a pretty natural way to get the kids, the guys out to Hampton Island, very famous Hampton Island. I think the only thing, like, I do think it was a little sweaty in terms of why they had to keep Bernie around.
Correct.
Like, it did seem like there probably should have been something baked in from the beginning, but you accept it. You get over it.
I'll say this. This was a bit of an emotional roller coaster movie for me, in the sense that I really, like, I was in and I was out. There were times where I was just like, this movie is actually, you have to not think about the fact that a man is rotting and dying. Like, if you can't think about the actual
Rotting.
Because he is festering. He's dying. Like, this is actually a pretty disgusting thing.
In his pants.
There's definitely poop in his pants.
Right?
That's for sure. For sure.
Like, he's sitting at his party, like, with the hot chicks, the lady riding him, like, all of
true.
It's true. I'll say that one of the. Can I just say that I think one of the strokes of genius that the actor Terry Kaiser, I believe is how, or Kisser?
Ted Kaiser.
Ted Kaiser.
Yeah.
The stroke of genius is the smirk on his face.
It's so true.
It's so brilliant because obviously.
Did you read up on that?
I did. Like, I guess he came to that conclusion because, like, he overdoses on heroin, so he figured he'd be very happy when he died.
Yes.
Which I guess is an interpretation of a heroin overdose. But I think that the smirk on his face makes you love him because he seems lovable. His performance, basically, is just him smiling as a dead guy.
He plays such a great dead guy. I feel so bad that, like, we don't talk about it enough. Like, I was rewatching it and, like, he never once, like, stiffens up. Like, he plays.
I know. Me too. I was looking at his legs the whole time.
So impressive. So
it is
like a method actor that like was like said no to this role originally and like decided on the smirk because he's like, if I don't do the smirk, then I'm just a dead guy. I'm like, you are still just a dead guy.
It's perfect. Yeah.
But he's also so good in the first 40 minutes before he's dead.
Yes.
Like, I was sitting there going, that guy's high as fuck. Like the whole time, when he's like in and out of the bathroom talking to them and he's, got the whole thing going on. Like I was like, this guy's great. I'm sad that he's going to be dead for the last half of the movie because I'm really enjoying his performance. And then I liked it even more. So for me, Ted Kaiser's.
I agree. And I would also say this is an odd comparison, but I'm going to make it, which is that I agree that he's so good in the first 40 minutes or so, or half an hour of the movie, that you like him enough that it continues. And it's sort of like Jude Law and The Talented Mr. Ripley, which is that he dies halfway through that film and his presence is still felt through the second half of it. Obviously, Bernie is physically there, which makes it different, but still, like, you are projecting that personality onto this dead guy so that he feels in a weird way animated, I guess. It's a very strange movie.
Can I say real quick, here's something I did love. I was into, obviously, Hampton Island, but just the whole, like, the look of the movie was so nostalgic. I loved art direction. I loved the style. I was looking at it going, I want this to be my whole aesthetic for this summer. Like,
how did you feel about that wallpaper on Jonathan Silverman? I knew as I watched that scene, I was like, Barrett's gonna love that wallpaper.
It is in his parents' apartment. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
60s vibe.
The look of the movie, I personally really enjoyed. Like all of the weird high cut bathing suits and like just it's reminded me how like sexy that era was in this really
hottest
way. But you're still like, God damn, I want like huge hair and like a tiny swimsuit and just.
I also think that like
the boat for.
I also think that as I was watching the beach portion of it, like once they get to Hampton's Island, I felt like there was a part of me that was like, wait, have I always thought that a beach party is Bernie's party? Like it feels like that weird sort of like prototype you have in your head of a party in the 80s is Bernie's party.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's really something special. Let me give a quick synopsis for the people that haven't seen Weekend at Bernie's. Fun-loving salesman Richard, played by Jonathan Silverman, and Larry, played by Andrew McCarthy, are invited by their boss Bernie, played by Terry Kaiser, to stay the weekend at his posh beach house. Little do they know that Bernie is the perpetrator of a fraud they've uncovered and is arranging to have them killed. When the plan backfires and Bernie is killed instead, the buddies decide not to let a little death spoil their vacation. They pretend Bernie is still alive, leading to hijinks and corpse desecration galore. It's written by Robert Klein, directed by Ted Kotcheff. Weekend at Bernie's opened on July 5th, 1989, in 8th place behind Lethal Weapon 2, Batman, and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It would go on to make $30 million on a $15 million budget and spawn a sequel that we referred to. It's also a cult classic. Weekend at Bernie's has 54% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics and 57% from audiences. Roger Ebert gave the film 1 star, said Weekend at Bernie's makes 2 mistakes. It gives us a joke that isn't very funny and expects that joke to carry an entire movie. That's basically his review. I mean, I think he was a little too intellectual about it, but
I think it is funny.
I think it is funny too.
I laughed all the time. I laughed so much.
Do you guys?
You loved it so much?
No, I laughed so much. I was laughing, which is hard these days.
It's true.
I don't
Jonathan
have those
Silverman
moments
has a real David Schwimmer vibe. Am I crazy in that?
It should have been David
assessment?
Schwimmer.
He does.
He's got that kind of vibe to him. Jonathan Silverman was a thing, right? Am I crazy? He had a show on NBC, right? Was that the single guy? Was that
He was
him?
a thing. He was also a thing in a show called Station 19.
We love Jonathan Silverman.
I had no idea. That's amazing.
Oh, I love Jonathan Silverman. He's a great actor, and a great guy.
What was he on Station 19?
He guested on Station 19 as Danielle. You want to fill in the blank here?
Please.
He guest starred on Station 19 as Inara, who is now Jack Gibson's girlfriend on the show. He guest starred as her abusive husband.
Oh, wow.
And Jack saved her.
And her son from her abusive husband, played by Jonathan Silverman, if you can believe it. That sweet-cheeked.
I'm going to have to go watch that because I don't believe that.
So Jonathan Silverman was very good in this movie. He was a thing in the 90s.
He is.
But he wasn't really a thing.
This was one of his first films, though, too. This was like early on.
He never quite popped off, I think, the way people thought he would pop off. And the single guy also was not really a success. Right? The single guy was
sandwiched between like Seinfeld
one of those
and Friends or something like that?
Seinfeld sandwich things. It was a time slot hero, and then
This was
it was
a show.
him. It was him, and it was a good cast. It was
I'm looking it up to see how long you're.
Yeah, it was Friends. It was Friends, but around one single guy who has, I think 4 friends who are in couples.
Ran for 2 seasons, 43
what's
episodes.
the dude's name? Joey, the other guy.
Joey Slotnick. Yeah.
Joey Slotnick. He's a good actor.
Ernest Borgnine plays his doorman.
Good actor. Ernest Borgnine's a decent actor. I love that. Like, I mean, I always love like that movie. That show is 25 years old now or older.
Older.
I always love when there's a guy like Ernest Borgnine who I think just died.
Are we going to start a rumor that someone died that didn't die?
I think he died. He died in 2012.
This is
at 95 years old with 6 wives. The guy had 6 wives. Wow.
So he just died. He just died 10 years ago. I love it when there's a guy who was playing an old guy 25 years ago who then went on to live for another 20 years.
Correct. Jonathan Silverman and Andrew McCarthy are interesting 80s things because obviously Andrew McCarthy has It's Pretty in Pink, right? That's his big one.
But he played the thing about that I kept having short circuiting about during this movie was that Andrew McCarthy in the Brat Pack, in and among the Brat Pack, was one of the hot guys. He was one of the prizes, right? Him and Rob Lowe and Emilio Estevez to some extent, but they were prizes to be won within the context of the group. Whereas Anthony Michael Hall was the nerd, and Judd Nelson was generally the rebel. But and John Cryer was a nerd. But Andrew McCarthy in that movie in Pretty in Pink has no range. He's basically a charming bimbo. And he's wonderful in Mannequin, which is beautiful romantic comedy. and he's so manic and fun. As I said to you, I kept trying to place who he reminded me of.
Yep.
And I think it was a young Tom Hanks.
I mean, it's worth saying
Turner and Hooch, Big, the Burbs, this like that like elastic like indefatigable quality. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He does some shit in the beginning with the chairs that I loved, and doing the play-by-play of him walking out of the office, and he's funny and cute and cool and like weirdly like I mean, it's kind of weird. I think the love story between Jonathan Silverman and Gwen.
It's not great. It's not great.
It's not great. I agree.
It's not great.
It's not great. It's also like
I had Gwen in my brain and great in my brain, and that's what happens. Great.
I'm not convinced that he's the right one to win the girl in the end of the movie.
He's not.
And for Andrew McCarthy to kind of just like not even consider romantic conquests in the film. Yeah. But yeah, I thought he was fantastic.
Walking through Andrew McCarthy's career very, very briefly, he obviously, St. Elmo's Fire, Pretty in Pink, Mannequin, that's 85, 86, 87, right? Like, and then Less Than Zero is in 87 as well. So that's really like, that's when he's really on fire. And Weekend at Bernie's is 89, as we know, and that's unfortunately kind of the beginning of the end. He does Weekend at Bernie's 2 in 93, but like, he never really is the lead again. I'm not really sure why that is, because I think that perhaps it's a little bit of his looks kind of hurt him a little bit in a weird way. Like, he's a good looking guy. And I think that people don't maybe think he's as funny or as kind of that he doesn't have sort of the range that he does show in movies like Mannequin. But and this, like, he's really funny in this.
Really funny.
I don't know why it kind of got away from him, but it did. I don't know.
He's now a big director. I mean, now that I don't know,
he's directing.
He directs all the time. Like,
and people really like love him.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I just mean, like, it's interesting to see in the 80s because we're all
actually.
Sorry.
In one of my first, he directed me. I just remembered this because he was an executive producer on an ABC show called The Family that I did a tiny little coaster.
I remember that.
On.
That's awesome.
Like, as one of my first jobs, and he was my director. I just remembered that. I knew I have a weird connection to Andrew McCarthy, and I can't remember what it is. And he was so lovely.
You know what I think it was for him?
Mm-hmm.
I think he was a little ahead of his time in terms of this guy who kind of looks and feels like a beta, but acts like an alpha. And I think that I think that those guys, certainly, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I'm thinking Toby, I'm thinking, Michael Cera in some roles, who were kind of able to, Michael Cera and Scott Pilgrim, for instance, were kind of able to, like, given movies to carry. Yeah. And Andrew McCarthy kind of wasn't. And he, to me, is a better version of that. Much better than those guys.
I totally agree. And we actually have another Andrew McCarthy film in 99 that we'll talk about, which is called New Waterford Girl, that my friend Leanne Balaban is the lead in. And I believe he plays a teacher in that. She said he's lovely. I've heard nothing but lovely things about him. I just think it's interesting to see how, and I guess this happens for every decade, but the people that were churned through the 80s that for whatever reason just never made it, in the same way in the 90s. Certain decades feel right for certain performers. Sorry, Danielle. Yeah.
So, no, it's also so hard to go from the Brat Pack. Like, where do you go?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like, every one of them was screwed. Like, you can't, barely any of them besides Robert Downey Jr. part of that? He was, right?
Ish.
He'd like 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah.
But besides him, like, no one else, right? Am I correct?
Rob Lowe.
No,
I mean,
Rob Lowe.
Demi Moore, but yeah.
So
she's only in St. Elmo's Fire, but I know what you're saying.
Isn't she just in the one?
Yeah.
Well, she's also in One Crazy Summer, which is a Jace. It's so good.
Is that part of the Brat Pack too?
Who are the guys? I think Andrew McCarthy. No, I guess.
Wait, are you talking about Last Night or One Crazy Summer?
No, One Crazy Summer.
Because she's in About Last Night as well. I totally hear where you're coming from.
Yeah,
because most of them.
It's John Cusack is One Crazy Summer.
Yeah.
So I think
it's all the tangential people that seem to have like really popped.
Totally.
Not no shade on Rob Lowe, who's doing fine, or there's a lot of people who are.
Well, it's because like the Judd Nelsons and the Molly Ringwalds and the the main people at the time.
of that
Well,
time.
I think that there's a reason for that. And I think McCarthy falls into this too. And this is a horrible thing to say, and the actors on this podcast
Oh, I can't wait to hear it.
can
Yeah, I
just
love
shoot
this.
me down.
This is gonna be great.
Well, no, it's because this is a difference between chasing your artistic muse and doing things that are a little more so I guess the word I'm looking for is like a little more like
You won't offend.
The
no,
suspense.
I'm not. The pragmatic is not the word I'm looking for. I'm looking for something much worse than that. I'm looking for craven is the word I'm looking for.
There it is. There it is.
Craven. All right.
Sure.
All right. So here's what I'm going for.
Okay.
Take the people in the Brat Pack: Emilio, Judd Nelson, Molly Ringwald, Andrew McCarthy, even Anthony Michael Hall, Ali Sheedy. Okay.
Yep.
The people who didn't pop, who didn't really get a big jump out of it. Now think about their roles in the movies. Molly Ringwald plays uber high status in Breakfast Club and very low status in Pretty in Pink.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And then somewhere in the middle in 16 Candles. You'll see that if you go through all of the ones I named, where sometimes they're playing really high status and sometimes they're playing really low status. Judd Nelson's playing, the punk, on the outside of Breakfast Club. He works for a congressman in St. Elmo's Fire. Right?
Barrett is just having a little bit of a meltdown thinking about Judd Nelson.
A hot flash.
Hot flash.
I mean, you go all the way. Andrew McCarthy plays the nerd in this movie. He plays the good-looking guy, the king in that movie.
Yeah.
But so what I'm saying is these 6 people, Ali Sheedy's the same thing. She plays like, perfect girl in Elmo's Fire. She plays the outcast in Breakfast Club. They did not establish themselves as a type. Right? Where Rob Lowe was always this, kind of airhead, handsome guy. And Demi Moore always put herself as this almost like cool, manic pixie dream girl. And the ones who really popped are the adjacent guys like Downey Jr. and particularly James Spader.
Yeah.
Who always played, even in these movies, Less Than Zero, Pretty in Pink, always played this like uber smart, erudite outsider. Right? Always. Yes. So when they were young, they kind of failed to establish the type of character that they were going to get cast at. That eventually, when they got to a certain, echelon of the industry, James Spader, we'll see it in Sex, Lies, and Videotape, is nothing like that character. But that was a few years later. So I think this is just me analyzing from my, perch here on this podcast. But that I think might have been the problem that, they didn't know what to do with it.
I think that like Anthony Michael Hall, who I think actually did really play into his type when he was a teenager, like hit his, late 20s or whenever he decided to like get buff and didn't know what to do. Right. Because he did like have a second, he was on a USA show. I remember when I was in
the Dead Zone.
Like a detective, right? Yeah. And like
he's an interesting case.
A dork anymore because he was like a buff, like kind of hot.
Well, that's the like
village guy.
There's like this deconstruction going on in Edward Scissorhands where he plays the jock who which by the way, I think he's great in that movie. But I know what you're saying, which is that he's trying to
I think he had a Jaleel White-esque mental breakdown.
Sure.
Where Jaleel White, I think, then this was like reported. Jaleel White couldn't handle playing Urkel at some point because in real life he was suave and cool. And that's why Stefan Urkel started. Because he basically was like, let me show you myself. I'm actually handsome and cool and I have good posture. And I think Anthony Michael Hall went through the same thing where and by the way, if you watch him in 16 Candles, as messed up as that movie is, he's a little genius. Like he's so fucking good in that.
I agree.
And
he's hilarious and wonderful.
So funny and charming. And it's like the Ducky scene from fucking Pretty in Pink.
Yeah.
The entire movie.
Yep.
Right? He is doing that one Otis Redding scene the whole movie. And it's so good. But I do think he really probably had a problem playing the nerd because he's clearly not a nerd. That's just not who he is.
Well, it's almost like he reminds me a little bit. You said Michael Cera earlier, and it's like he was sort of doing that in the 80s and like very successfully playing like a low status, dork who was really charming and really funny, and you wanted him to like get the girl and be like be on the right side, but he could never quite like find his niche, you know, in character at least. And then it sort of happened for him in real life.
I think it's really interesting that the other two people that were considered for this film were Corey Haim and Corey Feldman, and it was going to be obviously aged down a little bit, and they felt that they were too young and they wanted to make the leads older, which by the way makes complete sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I sort of understand that, you know,
it does feel like on paper it could have been a Corey movie, and thank God it wasn't. No shade towards my beloved Corey Feldman. But
no, but I do. It's interesting because then when I read that, I was like, License to Drive is sort of kind of Weekend at Bernie's a little. It's like an aged down, lower stakes, no one's dead, but it's kind of the two of them. And I do understand the instinct to want to put them in this, but I mean, it needs to be adults. Like you need adult situations. But just to give a little bit of context in terms of the development of this film, basically the writer, whose name, forgive me for forgetting, Robert Klein, did National Lampoon's European Vacation, which I believe is not a Kenny favorite, if I'm not mistaken. It's my
least favorite of the series, but I still love it.
He also wrote The Man with One Red Shoe. Anyway, long story short, someone asked him what his dream idea was, and he's like, I want to make a movie about two kids who drag a dead guy around Fire Island. So
now, that would have been
way the same
more
dream
exciting than Hampton's Island. Okay.
So
I'm guessing he's never been to Fire Island.
That's my assumption. So then the director, Ted Kotcheff, who did Fun with Dick and Jane and Rambo: First Blood, gets
so he's a genius.
So he's a genius, obviously. He's like, I love this idea. Let's do this. And then they get the script together. They find the financing. They obviously make the film. They screen the film, and Jonathan Silverman was quoted in saying, "Who the fuck is going to find this funny after the necrophilia scene?" And then obviously. I mean, I guess we all did. But it's the interesting thing too is, and I imagine this happens more times than not, which is that the movie tested really well. And I think the studio was very bullish about it and thought we've got a hit on our hands. And they put it in a weekend that they just shouldn't have. And it got just absolutely massacred by these giant tentpole franchises. Ultimately, it makes $30 million. It's profitable. They obviously make a sequel. It's called Hit and all of that. But it's one of those things that had they not released it in the summer, I bet if they released this in April or in October or something like that, this thing could have had bigger legs and probably could have been a bigger success. I also love that.
It seems like an April movie, Phil. Like it's the kind of gets you excited for the summer.
Right. Gets you
like
right.
Barrett and I right now.
Yeah. Good timing.
Right.
I love that. So apparently Silverman in an interview with Larry King said, "I'm thrilled and shocked and confused that this little movie that I made years ago has turned into a cult hit. We made it. I was lucky to have a job at the time. I had no idea people would find it amusing. It's about a guy who dies on page 20 and we drag him around the Hamptons for the rest of the weekend." But it made people laugh. I think that it's, I don't know.
Think he's embarrassed by this movie?
I think from an actor standpoint, they probably were when it first came out. I mean, they probably, like, if you say that Andrew McCarthy also didn't do anything great after this, like he probably says or feels like a lot of it was because of this film. So I'm sure in the moment they were embarrassed by it or felt that it, I don't know, missed the mark.
I would 1000% pay money to see you and Barrett do a remake of this movie together. I mean, I would watch the shit out of it.
I was gonna say, I just want to like horn, but that's like, I was watching this movie thinking if they tried to do this again, they would have to do it with women, and I think it would be totally different. Like it would, you could find more interesting and maybe funnier ways to like play some of this stuff. Yeah. But also like
I'd watch the shit out of it.
Well, you know what?
Real, because women never get to do crazy movies like this. Like I've been thinking about the 10-year anniversary of Bridesmaids just happened last week.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies of all time.
Great movie.
I feel super old to think about that, and I know we're not, but that's crazy. 10 years. And like I was thinking about it going, I love that movie because we get to watch a group of very funny women do a movie that's been done a million, not quite like that, obviously, but a million times with men and a bachelor party. But like, how much more interesting and innovative did it feel watching it like that? And so I was going, oh my God, this movie would be ridiculous if it were.
Well, I would say they did. They tried.
Was this the
Rough Night?
I was just gonna say, is this what you? Yeah.
Which used to have a great title called "Move That Body," and some idiot changed it to Rough Night.
Yeah. What movie?
But Move That Body. I mean, Rough Night, but Move That Body.
It's directed by the Broad City. Lucia, what's her name? I can't remember her last name. And
there are two writers from Broad City, and
Alana's
Paul Downs,
Alana Glazer,
and it's about 5 women on a bachelorette party, and they get a stripper, and the stripper like basically falls and cracks his head open and dies.
Correct.
And they have to move
ScarJo's
his
in
body.
it, isn't she? Yeah, I believe.
Yes. No, it's a great cast.
Yeah.
And Jillian Bell is in it. I think. It's a great cast, but it's I think it suffers from being too self-important. It's not silly enough. It definitely wants to be fun.
Yeah.
But like it's the Girls Trip vibe. I'm talking about Girls Trip, the movie. The Girls Trip vibe works really well for Girls Trip, which isn't at its core about moving a dead body. Yeah. But once you're getting into moving a dead body, like fucking open it up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like open it up and like go wild.
Well, because it's like it goes to Rough Night feels more like it's trying to do very bad things, which you guys might remember which
is honestly like a very bad movie.
It's not a good movie. For some
reason, like people like misremember that as like a good movie. That's an upsetting movie.
It's a great cast. It's just the tone of it is all off. I just think that the thing, and we talked about this at the beginning of this episode, but it's worth reiterating that this movie is fun, even if the concept is kind of gross and weird. And that tone, that high wire act that this movie is somehow finding is tricky. And I think that
what I'm saying is like, if you the premise of the movie is only as insane as you'll let it be.
Yeah.
And in Rough Night, like they play it pretty straight. Like the complications are that they have drugs on them, that they're professional people, that they're nervous about this dead body being, like being the ones who are accused of murdering him or being held responsible. All very real world problems you would have to deal with if you were in this situation. Bernie shit, it's not any. They talk about it for half a second, like is it going to be us? But very quickly, it's like, how can we use this to our advantage? Which is fun, and it's like that's
no one ever wants to be a bad person, and I'm sure that they're like, how do we make every actor in this show or every character be likable at the end? When I think it ruins it, because really, if you think about it, their characters in Weekend at Bernie's are technically horrible people.
You have to enjoy what you're doing. Yeah. Like they're enjoying it after the first, after they have that brief discussion of him being dead. It's like you said, they're playing it to their advantage. They're driving around in the boat, just having the best time, like doing whatever.
And that's the movie that I feel like women never get to do.
Yes.
Right? Like
I think delight in being terrible.
Yeah, because I think that there is this idea that like we never got, women would say, women at large, we never got our very bad things. So let us do our very bad things.
Yeah.
You really want? I mean, go do it, I guess. But that movie sucks, and it's a blight on society anyway. Like that's not what you want to do. Like. Don't like do your Weekend at Bernie's. Like have fucking fun with this.
I agree.
Like I think like Barb and Star is a really good example of like let's go fucking nuts and have fun.
Yes, couldn't agree more. And the thing about I couldn't help but think like do your Weekend at Bernie's 2 as well. Like Weekend at Bernie's 2, which is obviously even more gonzo and just goes completely balls to the wall. I mean, it is the Barb and Star of the Weekend at Bernie's movies. But I do think that Kenny's absolutely right. Like you're all absolutely right, which is this film is infectious in its own way because everyone's having a good time. And I think part of the problem with comedies today, and one of the reasons why I think Bridesmaids is as good as it is because they shot, 1 million hours of footage and it just has that sort of electric, improvisational kind of component to it. And I think that a movie like Rough Night is trying so hard to be clever and sharp and it's just, it gets lost in the I also think, and Kenny and I have talked about this a lot on this 89 podcast in general, but these movies are just simpler. Movies were just, they allowed a premise to be a premise. They didn't get too mired in how jaded an audience was or how smart an audience was. They just told the best story they could tell. And I feel like, unfortunately, we don't do that as well as we could now.
Why though? Why don't we? I agree we don't, but why?
Because
Or are we just
everyone's
overthinking everything?
afraid of wants to be sensitive, honestly. I mean,
Sure,
like
sure, yeah.
Barb and Star, I think comes the closest to like being almost could in a million different ways be offensive, but they just go for it, And I think that, and I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh no, it's all cancel culture is terrible. And, like, I don't agree with that. I think it's important, but I also think that like, yeah, there were a lot of like super problematic things in Weekend at Bernie's. And, for that reason, it can be distracting at times.
Sure.
Like, if you were to pull some of that stuff out, it still would be a funny movie. Like, I don't think like dishonoring the dead is like a problem.
Oh, for
in
sure.
So like, but you could delete some of the like the tiny moments of like homophobia or transphobia, and it would still be a funny movie. Or obvious sexism, but like it would still be a super funny, ridiculous movie, and and be still as ballsy and like go for I don't know.
Well, I think that I think part of it too. I mean, not to lament or to bitch about franchises and all of that, because that is ultimately what is fueling our industry in so many ways. But I do think that, you could easily remake this, by the way. We're obviously in a remake or reboot culture too. I think you could easily remake this film. I think that this film just sort of weirdly knows what it is. And I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that this film would be as confident as it actually is in a weird way. I want to kind of walk through the plot really quick here, but ultimately,
I want to say one thing. Sure. I because of this reboot remake talk we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. I figured someone must have some.
I was looking at you search on the internet. I was like, "What is he searching for?" Please don't say that.
He's trying to figure out whether or not they.
I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out whether this is made. And I stumbled upon this spec someone wrote called "Weekend at Bernie's 3," and I'll give you the log line.
Oh, geez.
No.
I'll preface it by saying it's good. In a pitch black comedy satire of the Hollywood reboot craze, 80s teen heartthrobs Andrew McCarthy and Jonathan Silverman attempt to restart their fading acting careers with a new sequel to their biggest hit, cult classic Weekend at Bernie's. But a gruesome mishap has them treading curiously familiar ground.
Well, because you can't.
I love it. It's hilarious.
I don't hate it.
They bring back the real guy, Bernie, and try to get him back, and then he dies, and then they're. How do you wait? This is the easiest pitch in the world. You bring back what's his name? Kaiser.
Yeah.
And you need him for Weekend at Bernie's 3, obviously. You need him, or else there's no movie. And he dies, and then you're carrying this motherfucker around.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You're shooting the movie within the movie with an actual dead guy.
That's actually pretty brilliant. That's actually pretty brilliant.
It's so funny.
I actually do like that.
Unfortunately,
and you can get all the players back.
Easily, and they would love to do it. Netflix would buy that tomorrow. I want to see if I can buy this from this dude.
You should. But just to go through the plot of this, we meet Larry and Richard. They're two sort of low-level financial employees at an insurance company in New York City. Here's the other thing too. This movie, and I'm sure Kenny obviously can attest this as well. 80s credit sequences were great because
good,
right?
Good.
Because they had goofy fonts, they had fun music, and they were just like, we're going to have a good time.
I miss them so much.
I couldn't agree with it. So like immediately you're like, it's fun New York City from 1989 when New York, I don't know if it was as fun as they're making it out to be, but maybe it was. I think it was kind of gross and dangerous, but anything's possible.
Both. Gross, dangerous,
it's all those things. And we then have their roof pool party, which I put in quotation marks. They have a kiddie pool. I do love that it starts. I mean, it's kind of a silly joke. I mean, the whole movie is a silly joke, but it starts on these tight shots of them. And Andrew McCarthy's concerned about going swimming after eating. And Jonathan Silverman is like, you should probably wait. And then he gets into a kiddie pool and slips on melted tar.
Yeah.
I love the way he falls into that kiddie pool.
It's great.
Same.
It's great. And then they realize through their reports, their actuarial reports, that there's like someone's basically Bernie's been pretending people are dead to get more payments off of dead people, which is.
Did anybody else get anxiety when Andrew McCarthy was looking at those papers with the tar on his hands?
Yes.
In the pool? I'm like, stop, clean yourself up. This is disgusting to me.
100%.
Like where the absurdity began, because I was watching him try to pull that beer can off of the car and being like, that's disgusting. That beer is so hot. Like, just like,
I know. That's when I felt like this is a good movie.
Yeah.
Like, we got it.
Yeah. It also, like, not to, you know, but the production design of that pool party on the roof has this a kind of adorable sadness, weirdness to it that just kind of made me, I don't know, it worked in terms of setting the stage.
But it's real. Like I had friends who would get kiddie pools and put them on their rooftops, you know, and it's like totally unsanctioned. Your landlord is not aware that you people are putting like whole pools of stuff that you're like bringing water up from your apartment in buckets to dump onto your roof. Like people did that, you know?
Yep.
And
New York City in the summer is the hottest place on earth.
It's disgusting. And those are just...
It is if you don't have air conditioning or if you can't get out of the city, you are left there to fry.
Mm-hmm.
The roast. You're roasting.
Sorry, please. Yeah, no, please.
I just love that I think it was the director or writer really wanted to make sure that it was as real as possible. And as silly, as stupid as this premise is, and like that it just continues on, like there are these little tidbit like that really, I think, make you go like, I love this, or I can relate to this in some way.
It's an oddly endearing moment because you like them. You know that they're at the bottom of the food chain. You're rooting for them. They're the underdogs. And then they discover
great chemistry too.
And they do have great chemistry.
Right in the beginning, I kind of noticed just how real their chemistry felt, despite the fact that one is a normal human being and the other wears plaid to work meetings.
It's true. They do seem like friends. Sorry, what was that, Barrett?
Oh, the purple Converse.
Yes.
And those socks.
Yes.
I was like, you're sweating so much right now.
Yes.
Speaking of being hot in New York in the summer, I was like, take those fucking socks off, dude.
He's also, I think he's daring you to like him.
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. He's like, you could never like someone like me. Look at how I dress when I come to meet you.
But they find these payments. They figure out that Bernie's essentially, well, they don't actually figure out that Bernie's the one. They figure out the company is doing this. Someone's doing this. They go and tell him about it. There's a great scene that's actually shot really interestingly as well. There's lots of like weird, almost like diopter shots of like people deep in the foreground and people in the background. There's all this like, and the office itself looks so fucking 80s. Like it's all these like blacks and grays and faux stone looking shit. It's just great. And
dot matrix computers everywhere.
It's great. I loved it.
I mean, printers.
Then we meet Gwen, which isn't as great, unfortunately. It's just a lot of like hitting on the intern stuff. That's just kind of like, it feels rote. And her, I mean, truthfully, I feel for the actress that plays Gwen, who has nothing to do in this movie. She's just literally like a skeleton key for plotting whenever they need her. But the actress I thought was quite good. I just think she just unfortunately doesn't get a ton to do.
It felt a little bit like they needed a reason for why would Jonathan Silverman not call the police. And like, they're like, oh, a girl.
A girl.
Yes.
Like it felt like that was the only purpose she really served, was that exact moment when he's on the phone with the cops and he's like, and doesn't do it. And that was it.
And you want to know what? Oh, go ahead, Barrett.
Oh, what?
Sorry. I just sort of wish that it had that, like, maybe they met some girls up there and that became part of the story, but that she wasn't, that it was more about his like work ambition or like his workplace ambition, which it sort of was, but like, it just felt weak, maybe because she wasn't super compelling, but like, you know.
She's just not written very well, unfortunately.
Well, I was going to say, and I will say it, it really speaks to like kind of what and where the male gaze was at the time and is now, that the rational character is the one who will give it all up for some intern he had a bad date with. And the irrational character is the one looking to have parties and meet new people. Like it's, and I don't even think I'm shading that to like make it sound worse than it is. It's like there was this idea that it's a rational, almost romantic move to just like blindly lust after a girl who's already rejected you because you're a big liar. You know? That's what we can relate to.
Yeah.
So I do think that's I completely agree, Barrett. I wish he met her there. That doesn't seem that hard.
Yeah, I don't quite. I mean, I do agree with Barrett that like it was a connective tissue back to the work and professionalism. But I also think that like, I also just, so he doesn't even really hit on her. He tells her that his aunt is dying or his aunt died. That's like the first thing he says to her. And she doesn't really know what to do with that, obviously. And then he like does this, I guess, cute thing where he hides behind his briefcase as he walks past her at the office. And she finds that endearing. I don't know.
She sells it. I'll give her credit. She sells it. She's adorable. And
she does sell it.
Yes,
she sells it.
Yes.
But you know,
There just isn't much to do.
don't you think, like, I mean, it allows me to appreciate where we are, hopefully for the most part now, with films like this that are just supposed to be funny, that like, it wouldn't have lost the movie anything to give her more to do, you know, when like they're in the elevator. Like I just noticed that right off the bat, like Andrew McCarthy's just like jabbing her in the shoulder as like, and pretending to be Jonathan Silverman. And then she turns around and doesn't say anything. And it's like, the movie wouldn't lose anything if she was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like if she was a little more, you know, direct, you could still make that transition from being like, who the fuck are these guys to, oh, he's kind of cute. Like, but without making her just a puppet.
I mean, she truly, the only initiative that she shows is she says, I hope your aunt's doing better, which is like her way of like talking to him.
Right.
And then you have like an admittedly funny physical bit of comedy of him in the elevator, not in the elevator doors, that whole bit, which I thought was funny. Mm-hmm. I'll also say too, as a person who doesn't really love elevators because I'm a little claustrophobic, all those people jamming themselves into those elevators in New York to like get to their offices or whatever, I was like, no, thank you. I'll take the fucking stairs. Like, I don't know why anybody would want to do that, but that's neither here nor there. So then we get to the scene that Kenny was referring to earlier with the mobsters, where basically Bernie goes to the mobsters and says, we got to kill these kids. They know too much. And then the mobster's like, you're fucking my girlfriend, so I'm actually going to kill you instead. The girlfriend, who, by the way, feels as though I couldn't help but be reminded of Jennifer Tilly in Bullets Over Broadway.
So.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's like definitely got that energy.
I love her so much when she's out there going, Bernie, 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 Bernie.
She's great. She's a cartoon character, but she's great. Yeah.
And he, though, when he played that high pitch, when she was at his crotch. Oh.
Yeah. He's great.
He's hilarious.
He's great.
Saying the guy's name, then he's like, ah! So great.
So then we have Richard and Gwen go on this date together, which is, I guess, sort of cute. It's fine. She's very eager to go back to an apartment where no one is there. He seems less...
Because that doesn't exist in New York, obviously.
Apparently not. But he takes her back to his parents, as we mentioned, with some tremendous set design. And there's a whole bit where like he talks about his parents dying, and then his father walks out in underwear in the middle of them making out.
It was so funny.
Butler.
Which was fantastic. And that's the director, by the way, of the film.
Awesome. Oh, really? Oh,
which
good
is
for
amazing.
Him. What a king.
I thought so too. He's fantastic. And then Richard pretends that he's the butler.
Amazing.
He went too far. He went too far.
What is the line? Because I was watching with my boyfriend and we both laughed out loud. What does he say when his son's like, you can go?
Yeah,
you can lay out my clothes. Lay out my clothes. Yeah. He's like, I'll lay you out.
And he's so dry.
He is so dry. I love that too.
He's fantastic. He's wonderful. So then Bernie, I forgot to mention that Bernie invites them to the Hamptons, Long Island, I guess is that where it is? Or where is
that is where the Hamptons are.
Yeah.
Long Island. Yeah.
But he does say Hamptons Island. Like
he does say Hamptons Island.
Place.
Yes,
and I
sure.
did Google Hamptons Island because I was like, is there something I don't know about the Hamptons that
It
they
doesn't exist.
I know the FOMO was coursing through my veins.
You're like, wait, is there a Hamptons Island I need to go to?
Yeah.
But so he invites them for Labor Day weekend to this party. I'm assuming he invites them there because that way he'll know they're both there so that they can be killed at his party.
Yes.
Well, yeah,
correct.
he sets up the whole ransom thing with the note, or not the ransom thing, the death note, the suicide note with the money.
Yes. Correct. So then Bernie arrives at the island before Larry and Richard, plans the murders with this guy, Paulie, the hitman, on the phone, unaware that the conversation is being recorded on an answering machine. Again, it gets a little sweaty. Like, it's definitely like contorting itself into some pretzels for plot.
Yes.
But Bernie then plants cash and a fake confession.
And it didn't have to. It didn't have to be this sweaty.
It didn't.
And I do think that like my one negative comment about this movie. Well, it's an umbrella comment.
Okay.
I think that there were a lot of missed opportunities.
Yes.
I think things that could have been all right. So I think one is simplifying the plot. Like, you didn't need all these like really ridiculous machinations. Two, I think the gangsters could have been much bigger, much broader, much funnier.
I agree.
And I think that they really kind of like cheaped out without having a killer 80s soundtrack playing throughout the whole thing.
Totally.
There were so many times with, where it really needed either score or a needle drop that, brought me to emotionally where I wanted to be, but just felt really static in a way that bugged me.
I felt the same way. There's a lack of propulsion going on. And I think score and editing, it really could have just...
I think technically speaking, this movie is not where it needed to be, which is a weird thing to say about Weekend at Bernie's. Which which by all rights should be a complete dud and is very close to a masterpiece. But I do think it could have really just been perfect.
Yeah. I actually think the movie is perhaps like 5 to 10 minutes too long. Like, I think that if it had just been tightened a little bit, and to your point, Kenny, I don't even need like
I didn't feel that way 80s. At all.
I think that there's a little
at the
bit,
80-minute mark, because it only had 20 minutes left or like 12 minutes left. At the 80-minute mark, Rollins, my son-in-law, I was like, it's almost over. Like, it flew for us.
All I'll say is, more importantly, I didn't need 80s hits. I needed 80s songs. Like, I just needed I needed something that was just giving it a bit of a kick in the pants is really ultimately.
Yeah, like that ridiculous like theme to the movie, which was terrible. It was perfect.
So good. It was so good.
I disagree. Yeah. I loved all the music. I don't think it needed any more music or any different music. That was like stupid, cheesy tunes that it played. They remind me of that movie.
I just needed more of it. That's all. I just needed it playing the whole movie. I want no downs. Because in Weekend at Bernie's 2, there is music playing throughout the whole movie because it's actually like diegetic music that's important to the plot. And that's a vibe that I kind of was hoping that would be, running through this movie. This movie feels a little bit early 80s. And I say that as a criticism before they kind of recognize the power of the soundtrack. Like, Mannequin is,
it's great.
a little
that Starship song? That Starship song at the end?
It is such a good fucking song.
So fucking good.
You're going like, wow, okay, this became a podcast about the music and Weekend at Bernie's.
I appreciate it. I just don't think I didn't think about it once. And as you're saying it, I'm like, it's like they almost relied on the energy of Andrew McCarthy primarily to just careen them from one thing to another, as opposed to like the editing or the music or, whatever else. It just was sort of the characters sort of stumbling from one thing to another with all of this momentum.
Speaking of music,
that ends,
Speaking of music,
as the expert,
what
is there a Weekend at Bernie's musical? No. Could there be? Is really my question.
Yeah, there could be.
Oh yeah.
I swear to God, they're making everything into a musical right now. There's some shit that I'm hearing about.
You're just saying the bar is so low, but don't you think this could be really good?
Well, I think it could be an amazing. I know who I would cast as Bernie. First of all, I mean, Oh, Andy Carl, who I did Groundhog Day with. He would be amazing. I mean, he's a little young for it right now.
You're saying that your friend would be amazing playing the dead person.
Yeah, because he's a great dancer, and he's like an amazing physical comedian, and he's like really charming and could do the first part really well, and then it would hinge on an incredible physical performance from him. Like, and they would have some massive dance numbers with him. Just
exactly.
Well,
this makes me
imagine
think that,
how cool that would be.
It would be great.
Are you seeing a merging of 1 and 2, Kenny? Like, are you seeing this musical as being sort of a blending of the Bernie movies?
I almost am thinking it's a new thing altogether.
Interesting.
Like with very much of the spirit, very much these same characters, but kind of a new storyline. And I'm almost thinking maybe, because I do think you want Bernie to be as active as possible.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know how you get there, but maybe Bernie's like a wedding singer band, like a wedding band singer. And that's what they need to do with him, or something where like something where you get him up and moving and singing and is very like, I mean, I think that works.
But is that not where the magic of the second one perhaps could come into play in terms of, he does get pretty reanimated in that film?
It could, it could. And I like that stuff, but I think the puppetry we're talking about would be amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many like things they do now. Like, I mean, we did some amazing shit in Groundhog Day, but also, we didn't use anybody getting pulled up into the, I mean, I can just picture them strapping him into something.
Yes.
And
this is also making,
in the theater, which they can make happen now.
You go big.
There's all kinds of crazy.
Because now I'm thinking that Bernie's starting to feel like Warhorse.
Yeah.
You know how they did the horse with the puppets?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's great. Well, guys, we're obviously going to do this. So at this point, Polly arrives and kills Bernie with a heroin overdose, which I got to be honest, it's kind of a clever way to kill somebody.
Great.
Kind of a good way to go to.
I'm sure it is. So Larry and Richard arrive. They're at Bernie's house. They're shocked to find that Bernie's dead before they call the police. The guests arrive at the party and no one cares that this guy is dead, essentially. And they put some sunglasses on him to conceal his lifeless state. I don't know how concealing it is, but all that being said, fearing that they're going to be implicated in Bernie's death, they want to maintain the luxury of this house for the weekend, and they decide to maintain this illusion.
The sunglasses are iconic.
Of course, I'm not against the sunglasses.
I know.
That
so sometimes it's iconic. Sometimes the aesthetic is worth the sweatiness, and I do think that John the Silverman very quickly says I can't look at his like dead eyes or some shit like that.
Yeah, something.
And that's why they keep putting sunglasses on him. But it's a great look. That's what I would do with the dead guy if I was trying to make him look alive.
It becomes less of a great look when his wig, his toupee comes off, and that clearly that bald, that clearly, I mean, all of it, it's absurd. But yes, it's. But then there's a weird thing that happens where Richard and Gwen go to a lighthouse, and Richard gets blinded by the lighthouse. It's just like weird stuff that I don't know why we needed the lighthouse. I mean, I
think that was them trying to you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but like them trying to like build a relationship because there was none between them. Sure. Because even in the end, you're like, wait, why is she with him? He lied to her multiple times.
No, I agree. The lighthouse feels like world building in a weird way.
Which, I mean, it was, if you're kind of not overthinking it, it's cute and adorable and he falls and hurts himself and she's able to like take care of him. But, and then she almost, what is it right after that she almost has sex with him on the beach and then
Bernie washes up and Bernie cock blocks him essentially.
Which I thought was funny. I actually thought that was funny.
I mean, Bernie does a lot of cock blocking for a dead guy. It's pretty, Bernie gets laid. No one else does. Kind of impressive.
That's funny.
Yes. Amazing note.
Yeah. Yes.
So, I mean, there's that. Which brings us to the part where Tina shows up and has sex with him. And that makes the mobsters think that he's not dead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a hilarious running joke.
I mean, it is.
They keep killing him, and then he keeps coming back, and it's mob. I mean that mobster is
correct
50% of the way there, but there is a lot more to do.
Correct.
I think.
Correct. Speaking of a lack of technical proficiency, there's a moment where Tina comes down the stairs after having sex with Bernie, and she's singing, but her mouth is not moving. So there's this terrible ADR moment of her walking down the stairs and she's singing, but her mouth isn't moving, which is kind of great. And then she's right. So fooled into thinking Bernie's assassination failed. Paulie tells Vito. It's a whole thing. The next morning, Richard is appalled to discover that Larry's furthering the illusion of Bernie being alive by manipulating the body's limbs and playing Monopoly with him. There is a great moment where he puts his hand on like a string and has him waving at everybody, doing all these ridiculous movements. It's great.
Landed in Oriental Avenue.
It's fantastic. So then Richard attempts to call the police, but instead activates the phone message detailing Bernie's plot to kill them.
That is also one of the first times they go real slapsticky with Bernie's body right before.
Correct.
He falls off the deck.
Yes.
He gets I lost it when the mobster, is choking the life out of an already dead guy.
He's on top of him.
So funny. Then the kid is burying him.
Correct.
And I like that
Wait, sorry. I love that kid so much. How is that?
That kid is you, Barrett. That kid is you.
It is.
That kid is you.
That kid, what does he say when he like turns around and he looks at him and goes,
He's like, fuck you.
and he leaves? I was like, that is like the gif I want to use for everything. Like, I just want that little image of that kid being like.
That kid's the button on the movie.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
At the end,
love him.
Like it's great. Then we get the bald head thing, the stapling of the wig. I don't know that we needed that, but I mean, I guess
I want to say one more thing about my son, which I can't stop. So when we watch PG-13 movies, he's very into finding the one fuck.
Yes.
When they say fuck, and it happens earlier with some woman says fuck, and he's like, that's what they use the fuck on. So the kid does this.
Yeah.
And he goes, I think they would have used the fuck on that if they hadn't already done it. And he's like, I think they should have. I think it would have been funnier.
It's a good note. It's a good note from Rollins.
Yeah.
Then we get this very elaborate boat sequence that really feels like them. This was where they went all out. Budget-wise, feels like the boat
not
stuff.
Soundtrack-wise. This is where they needed some real fun, kind of jumpy,
I'll agree. Okay, I see that. I see it.
Because they're trying to get off the island and they can't. So they keep trying to get off the island and they keep getting thwarted in these various attempts. And they keep getting stuck with Bernie. Like it's weird in the sense that like they kind of just want to dump Bernie and get the fuck off the island, but Bernie keeps like re-emerging in their lives essentially. So you have this whole boat sequence dragging Bernie behind the boat and hitting his body on these metal pillars along the way. It's hilarious stuff. It's hilarious. It's good stuff. It's just great.
The boat pulling out though gave me a lot of anxiety.
Yes,
like a lot.
Yes.
Being hooked to the dock still, the anchor being people, Andrew McCarthy just not being able to drive that entire scene. I was like, just move on to the next.
It's kind of stressful to watch.
Yes,
because it's really fucking dangerous. Like you're just anyway. So they eventually get onto the open seas. They do all this shit. Then they run out of gas.
Too much. This movie's too
so
funny.
then they have to go back to the island with Bernie.
Right.
Yes,
like where this is where I would have loved a reason to keep Bernie around. Like, like an action, like a plot. I know that it might have made everything even a little more ridiculous, but like, why wouldn't you just dump that body and, I mean, I guess he was their flotation device or whatever, but it was just sort of like, it made all of a sudden I was thinking about like, why have they kept this body so long?
It was bad.
Staged it, like had a hilarious scene where they stage it in his house and then, they get off scot-free or whatever. But like, I know that's not the plot of the movie. I was just sitting there going like, why are they dragging this body out into the ocean and they're not even going to do anything with it out there?
Well, it was bad. I mean, it was there, and this is like it could have been a lot better, but it was on the answering machine.
Oh, right.
Bernie said, "Don't kill him when I'm around." So their idea was if they're with Bernie, they won't be killed.
Right.
It was lame. I think there could have been a million better reasons, but I do think that is the contextual reason why they had to, use his body as a kickboard.
It feels like they're using him as cover.
Right.
And in the hopes that if he's around, they won't get killed. It's again, like an unnecessary thing that doesn't, totally work. But they get back there. Paulie's now unhinged by his apparent failure to kill Bernie. They return to the island. Gwen confronts Larry and Richard, who now confess that Bernie is dead. Paulie appears, opens fire at Bernie, then turns his attention to Larry and Richard and Gwen. He's chasing them around. Then Larry's able to tie him up in the phone cord.
While Paulie's trying to bite him the entire time.
Correct. The police
Bernie
eventually
kicks
arrive.
Paulie in the nuts.
Yeah, they put him in a fucking straitjacket.
Yeah.
Larry
They don't do that enough in movies anymore. They don't put
Larry-
people in straitjackets anymore.
kills it, by the way.
Yes.
Like the fact that Larry single-handedly, because Silverman comes out with the lamp,
Mhm.
he
Barely.
never uses it.
Never.
Yeah.
So he single-handedly takes down this mobster with a phone cord,
Correct.
and then gives him one of these,
Yep.
like boxes him down.
Yep.
Like it's so cool. I'm so into him at that moment.
And then the police take Paulie away in a straitjacket. Bernie's loaded into an ambulance. However, the gurney rolls away, topples off into the boardwalk, dumping him on the beach directly behind our three main leads. And they run away after noticing him. After The Burbs, which was another movie that ends with an ambulance crashing and a gurney coming out, this feels like maybe this was a trope in the 80s that I didn't really know about, which is gurney hijinks. But
Yeah,
all
but
that
this
being
is
said,
hilarious.
Honestly,
it's great.
don't even know why we haven't used that on Station 19 yet.
I really feel like you guys should.
Come
It
on,
feels like a
bring it
missed
back in.
opportunity. It really does. So yeah, and then basically the young boy comes back and starts scooping buckets of sand over the body, burying Bernie. I had this weird feeling at the end of feeling sorry that Bernie wasn't getting a proper burial. At this point, this guy's been through enough. Can we
Fuck
give him a proper
Bernie.
burial?
Fuck him. He tried to kill the guys. Fuck
Yeah,
that guy.
great.
I think that's the best, most honorable burial he could have had. Was that little awesome kid
It's true.
dumping buckets of sand on top of him.
I don't disagree. I actually think you're
Even there to
absolutely
be
right. I think you're
rediscovered
absolutely right.
in another film, you know?
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about this movie other than that I think it might actually now be an 80s comedy masterpiece in a way that I certainly didn't before we sat down to talk about this.
Mm.
Do you guys
Whoa.
Kenny, do you have other thoughts you want to add to this?
No, I loved it. I loved it. I love this podcast.
Danielle, I feel like this is your movie. So I mean, this was you concocted this. You made this happen.
I did make this happen.
So are there any other, feelings you have about this film that you want to relay to the masses?
No, I think it's good whenever we talk about it because you make me realize little things like, yeah, I guess it kind of got a little weak and slapstick right in the,
Right.
forced the way through and then kind of wrapped it up at the end. Maybe you're right. It needed some better 80s music, I guess, in that part as well, even though I do love the cheesy music at the beginning. I love it. I come to the agreement that Barrett and I should make a television or a
please.
TV movie remake.
Please do
TV.
it, guys.
Cool.
No,
I mean, my
4,000
God.
screens. Let's go.
I mean, seriously, you guys.
Danielle,
I mean,
can you sing?
I can pretend to sing. I'll be like the lady that comes down the stairs. I won't move my mouth, but you guys can dub it over. with
All
me.
right.
No,
That's
Look,
fantastic.
I think it's a great idea. I think you could set it in a totally different place.
Mhm.
And me and Danielle, which I mean, that's why I keep laughing because I thought this was an assignment from maybe Phil and Kenny because that was the idea. Because I watch this and I'm like, this is like a real life thing that we could go through. Danielle.
You were just getting Maldives flashbacks, Barrett.
Oh.
yeah, like we
You
just
guys
end
go to-
up.
I'd watch a Maldives version of this with you guys for sure.
Well, it goes like one of two ways. It's either the last movie we did this podcast together about.
It's true. Yeah,
Or-
Brokedown Palace.
Yes,
It's really kind of one or
true.
the other. Feels like they're
Yeah.
both ends of a very interesting spectrum.
Maybe that's the underlying thing. I know I'm doing podcasts with Barrett, and I'm like, I'm just manifesting that I want to remake these movies with Barrett.
Oh my God.
Just like
That's tremendous.
buddy comedies
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
hijinks or, getting arrested.
Or getting prisoned in Thailand.
And none of us have to give up our lives for
I
the
mean,
other.
I would, you guys should be the next, duo. Like, why isn't that happening?
You guys should be the next McCarthy and Silverman.
I mean, with much.
Don't,
Yeah. Don't.
And I have to say, I'm
That
sorry
was
that I lived.
The sadness and fear in Barrett's face when you
I
said that.
love both of
Well,
them, but it's I.
No, it was a
I
joke.
hope
It was a
that-
joke.
Obviously, yeah.
You could be the lemon and Mathau.
I wish that you guys. I mean, God, I wish you could have talked to Jonathan Silverman about Weekend at Bernie's when he was on the show. That would have been.
Didn't
that would
you?
have been amazing. I feel like Danielle must have.
I did talk to him about it. We didn't
You
have a
must
very
have.
in-depth conversation, but I told him how much I loved him in Weekend at Bernie's, and I think
Let's see if we can get him on. Let's see if we can get on the pod.
Oh my God.
Yes,
We
he's
should
great.
try to get him on. Talk about Weekend at Bernie's. I don't know that he wants to talk about
How
it.
cool would it have been if you guys surprised us with him?
Yeah,
If
it's
you
like,
gave-
he's
if-
here
if
right
you-
now.
if you-
And he
You
popped into the
mystery
Zoom.
guested him. Yeah.
He
That
does.
would have been
I know
hilarious.
he lives not
Zoom
that
bombed
far
us.
away
We can
from me.
actually make this work because
Really?
also I think is friends with our old casting director,
Uh-huh.
and that's one
Listen.
of the reasons when he got it. They were like, "How is it? How are you liking? We love Jonathan."
Was he, here's the question, Danielle. When
Yeah.
you went up to him and said, I loved you in Weekend at Bernie's, how was that received? Was it received positively or was it received with the, oh, great?
No, I think it was more oh great, but it was like, yeah, like I don't even remember what he said.
Right.
I talked about many other
Right.
things after that, but I just had to let him know that I loved that movie growing up.
I imagine he gets that a lot.
Yeah.
And he might not love it.
No, for him, it probably was like, yeah, I got when it actually happened.
30
Yeah.
He
years
was
ago.
so nice though, and so chatty, like
that's
so
great.
so wonderful, and that was.
That's awesome.
So I imagined, I didn't hear it, but I imagine that must have been a
I
very
think-
pleasant conversation.
I think that there's probably a double-edged sword for him because in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
it has prolonged his career,
Mhm.
but also gave him the career he didn't want at all.
But it's interesting, like you said, Andrew McCarthy really didn't work much after this, and this was one of Jonathan Silverman's first movies. So it's almost like it brought his name into. We know his name I know his name because of Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
Sure. I think there's also, and I don't know how this is a you problem in the sense that you guys are actors. So I imagine people come up to you, and say how much they love you in whatever the projects are. I imagine that the lesser seen things are the ones that you might very well feel a little bit more attached to in a certain way. Like I was talking to someone the other day about how she saw Alia Shawkat at the airport or something like that. And she went up to her and she said, I loved you in, and you could tell that Ali was like prepared for Arrested Development, like that would be the thing. But she actually mentioned some ABC family show called like State of Grace or something like that she loved. That was some show that ran for a season. And Ali was so happy to talk about that, right? Like was just like, thank you for the thing that people haven't seen as much. So I imagine that getting reminded of the thing constantly could be, slightly annoying.
I'll
That's
say
true.
this. I had thought I'd heard this, and I think it's true because I just looked it up. He was offered, or not he was offered.
Right.
The network wanted him to play Ross on Friends.
See, that makes
Jonathan
sense.
Silverman.
And yes, the
No.
network, Crane and Kaufman wanted Schwimmer, and the network wanted Silverman, and Crane and Kaufman won. But yes, it does seem like that is the sliding doors version of his life.
And as
That's
an actor,
amazing.
it is miserable when you're so similar to another actor that also is like, you guys are like, you look alike, you have the same vibe, and that one's
Yeah.
the one that.
I'm gonna go murder Kristen Bell for you, okay? Don't worry.
Can
So
I
I'm
just
glad. I'm glad that that's my comparable.
well, I think it's interesting because, and I imagine as actors, this is
Frozen.
something that happens all the time, right? Which is that people go, people audition for roles, and But I have a friend, and I always think about this in this particular situation. I have a friend, more of an acquaintance, who was cast in the first shot version of Big Bang Theory. She was the Kaylee Cuoco character,
Oy.
and
Oh.
got recast,
Wow.
and now
This podcast just took a real turn.
like
It's just so, it happens.
I just can't even imagine. I can't even
Game of
imagine.
Thrones, you think about
It's gotta be tough. But again, like this is the business we work in. I'm sure that, Kenny and I have been in situations, I'm sure, in terms of like going up for jobs and someone else gets it and that's just what it is. But like it's brutal when it's a
I've never had a Big
stratospheric
Bang
hit.
Theory situation.
Oh, well, sure.
I've never been the Dunkelman of anything.
The
So,
Dunkelman?
Yeah.
But like I imagine Silverman has to look at Friends and be like, what could have been?
I think you have to let it go at some point. If like
Sure.
everyone, like if you just
You know
got
what?
stuck on that.
Look, I'm gonna say this too: I love David Schwimmer. I didn't really give a shit about Friends. But
Wow.
yeah, I didn't watch Friends at all.
This
I
is
wasn't
why
allowed to
we're
watch
friends,
TV.
Barrett, because we might be the only two people in the world that don't care about Friends or watch
Yeah.
Friends.
Good
Yeah.
for you guys.
It's probably doesn't. Yeah, I'm sure we'll.
Do you, so out of curiosity, because you guys are younger than Kenny and I, so I think is part of that a little bit generational?
No, because my friends love Friends.
Same.
Interesting. Okay.
Same. I don't know that many people who haven't watched it. I think it was just a combination of like Danielle was watching like Seven and Weekend at Bernie's, and I was watching The Birdcage and Tea with Mussolini for some reason.
I love the Birdcage.
We missed I wasn't like allowed to watch TV.
Tea
so
with
I missed
Mussolini trumping Friends is the most
there you
Barrett
go.
thing I've ever heard in my
Well,
life.
I was like,
Some
who's
things just
people?
pass
I'm
you
talking
by.
about Maggie Smith. Like that's not,
Wait, but can I ask, what was your Friends? And by like, was there a comedy? Was there a show that you watched that like, did you
Ooh.
guys have a thing?
The Golden Girls.
Well, I mean, amazing and a great show.
Very good.
Yeah, reasonable.
That's what I watched.
You didn't have a sitcom that spoke to you, Barrett, when you were a kid? Not really.
No, it wasn't until I got into, actually, you know what's crazy? Because I've been in the middle of like a solid rewatch for the millionth time, but like I didn't really watch TV until I was in like mid to late high school. I wasn't
Sure.
like allowed to. So when I caught on to like fun TV, I bought the DVDs, like the whole DVD set of Arrested Development. And I watched all of that. I watched
Interesting.
30 Rock like a crazy person.
Sure.
I watched, and this is
The
all
Office.
later.
Right.
Yeah, I watched The Office. I
But
watched
Arrested Development and 30 Rock are the two best shows. Those are the two funniest shows that have ever been on TV. The Office is 30 Rock is the funniest show that's ever been on TV.
Okay.
Arrested Development might be number two. They're just
See, I
they're
wasn't-
the funniest.
They're the funniest.
They might not be the like I love The Office and I think it's incredibly funny, but I also think The Office is really, really mean spirited and doesn't age that well. Like I think The Office
See, it's funny.
is
I have the exact feelings about Arrested Development. I think that show's mean spirited and actually doesn't
it's
age that
not.
well.
No, it's not.
Interesting.
I don't. And again, I'm not. I don't hate it by any means, but I'm just.
Arrested Development's all punching up. The Office is almost all about like Jim, the one handsome, well-adjusted kid, like good-looking guy, making fun of all the fucking weirdos in the office and bullying them.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but Parks and Rec. I'm more of a Parks and Rec person than an Office person to begin with.
It has a bigger heart. But it's
That's my thing. Ultimately, comes down to, and it's why I haven't done a full rewatch of 30 Rock, and I know that people love it, and I should probably do that. And I liked it when it was on. It just didn't really stay with me because I tend to gravitate more towards the shows that are like overtly a little bit more heart forward than snark forward.
Weak,
So that's
mean. I don't like that. Snark forward?
You don't think that those are snarky
Snark
shows?
forward? They're hilarious.
That's not disputing my point, but
No,
I hear
mean,
you.
But no, you can't be a show that you can't be a show that rides on snark. That's not a thing. You ride on story.
Would argue that Parks and Rec is also about a bunch of people. Weirdly, as the more I watch it and the older I get when I do rewatch bits of it, I'm like, all these people are like working in public service, but they're very self-involved. Like I cannot
Well,
stand
that's true. That's
Tom. I can't
yeah, Tom sucks.
stand him.
Well,
I don't really
Aziz
get
has a
the
whole
show
thing
either,
now.
to be honest.
Aziz
I
has a
know.
whole thing now that
I know, but it's like I know that people like love the dynamic of all these characters, and I'm like, actually, I think they're all really obnoxious.
Parks and Rec is tough to rewatch now, especially with Chris Pratt being what Chris Pratt has turned into. So there's just stuff
so
with
brilliant.
Parks and Rec.
He's so funny. I will never be able
I think the reason I brought this up is because I do think that, 80s sitcoms and early 90s sitcoms are different than your late 90s, early 2000s and what have you. Like, it does feel as though there are sort of these like different times. And I look at the 80s, and to me, it's like the show is Cheers is the show that I associate with like 80s sitcoms. And I think Cheers is great. I've rewatched Cheers over the years, and I do think that show holds up incredibly well. But there's something very classical about that. Like, it's obviously, multicam and all of that. And I just think it's interesting to see that sort of shift. I think Weekend at Bernie's falls into an 80s paradigm as well to a certain degree. So and I don't say that denigrating, anything that came out of the 90s, obviously. And by the way, like, I still love Arrested and 30 Rock. I wouldn't ride for them in the same way that some other shows speak to me. That's
Hey, it's your prerogative.
Thanks, Kenny.
Thank
you for letting me have that.
It's the way that you want to live. But I think Bernie's strengths are in its 80s aesthetic. I think beyond just the look of it, the feel of it, the pace of it, the willingness to take the particular, leaps it takes.
I hope that we get to have Halloween again someday, and that I can be the Bernie to Barrett and Danielle's Weekend at Bernie's Halloween costume, because I think that would be tremendous. And that I wouldn't have to talk to anybody. I could just pretend like I'm dead the whole time.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Genius.
There you go. I try. I could just smile with sunglasses on.
That I would want to dress up like the Andrew McCarthy because it's just more my style. But I do think that, like, if we were to, and that's probably who we would play. I don't know. Who do you think? Do you think I would play the Andrew McCarthy, or would I be the straight man?
You would absolutely be Andrew McCarthy solely for the purple Converse.
Yes. You could rock Andrew's outfits in this movie so well.
McCarthy.
I don't know who you were pointing at.
Yeah, I think
I'm pointing it. Oh, sorry. I'm pointing at you, Barrett. Barrett, you are Jonathan Silverman.
I'm Silverman.
Really?
Danielle, I've done a few podcasts with you guys now, and Danielle, you're a bit of a wild card. I got to tell you. You're a little wacky. You're a little wacky. So I don't know, Barrett. You're very self-assured. I don't know if that was very composed.
I don't know how to take this, Kenny.
They're both compliments, but I feel like you take them both as insults.
No, I don't. As somebody who's worked with Danielle and like knows her sense of humor and knows that she is at her absolute funniest when she has no idea what like when she's like going for it.
Right.
But can I also say that I feel like Jay Hayden already dresses like Andrew McCarthy in this movie?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
So I feel like, there's that too. Guys, this was an absolute blast, and I really thank you both for coming on.
I have to say, I'm sorry for saying a lot of actors' names wrong in this podcast.
What? Stop.
Oh yeah, it's Ted Kaiser, not Terry Kaiser. I said it wrong. You corrected me.
It's all good.
Like, it's also like Anthony C. Hall, not Anthony Michael.
It's Anthony Michael. It's all good. You got Michael C. Hall and Anthony.
It's Anthony Michael Hall.
Correct.
Yeah, I have said him wrong. I've said
Anthony C. Hall.
Wrong.
Yeah. She got Dexter mixed up. It's fine.
Yeah, they don't give a shit.
They
They hear it all the time.
But the actress who plays Gwen is also named like.
Yeah, her name is Catherine Mary Stewart.
Catherine Mary Stewart, not Mary Stewart Masterson or Mary.
Sure.
Like all of these other.
Catherine Mary Stewart. Wow.
Yeah. Let's rate this real quick because I know you guys have places to be. So I'll go first. Don't want this to end, though. Listen, I could talk about Weekend at Bernie's with you for hours, Danielle. I mean, I please. I have to be honest that before this podcast, I didn't think as highly of this film. I had it at a 30 coming into this podcast.
Phil.
So I didn't love it. I thought it was fine, but I didn't love it. I have been turned around. This is a big jump. I'm at a 77 now. I feel like this movie is legitimately a lot better than I was giving credence to. And part of it is because I love Danielle and Barrett, and my affinity for them being what it is that I've been convinced just based on what you guys had to say. I love Kenny too, obviously, but I hear Kenny all the time. So I'm at a 77. Where are you at, Kenny?
I mean, all right. So I said a bunch of shit. I said a bunch of shit about it. Like, I think my review is summed up in the last thing I wrote, which was, what can I say? I loved it, which is just like, I don't know, this fucking movie. I also want to say the other thing I said, which was like, I very much like that we're doing this. It holds almost no artistic value, nor is it particularly influential, but it holds an outsized space in the collective cultural consciousness. And for that, it's really interesting. But I do think it's even better than I thought. Like, I loved it at a gut level. So I gave it an 80, which really is like, and I love it.
Wow.
And I'm going to go even higher. I'm going to go to an 83. I want to make it very clear that, like, I do not think this is like, you know, a super masterpiece or anything like that. But I think like and I saw it when I was a kid, and I probably would have given it like a 45. Right? I don't remember this movie being a movie I ever wanted to watch again. And in fact, I thought this was one of those movies like Goonies that belongs to other people and not me. Right?
Yeah, I don't get Goonies either.
That, like, it's just that's someone else's thing, and I've tried to watch it like a bunch of times. I'm just like, it's just not. I wasn't there at the time when I needed to be there. Which is true with Bernie as well.
Right.
But this is not that. This movie just like fucking works as long as you're willing to work with it, right? As long as you're not fighting against it, like, you will love this movie. So I'm going to an 83. I think this is a great fucking flick. So happy we did it.
Barrett.
All right.
What do you think? Before the podcast, after podcast?
Before the podcast, I think I would give this movie like a 40.
Sure. I'm right there with you.
Into it. I thought it was fun. I think that I like talking to you guys about it because it reminded me of how iconic I think this movie was. And when I thought about it and we were recounting it, and I was thinking about the things I loved about the movie, like the style of it and my nostalgia for other movies that are similar that I tend to like better. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I don't know. I think I would give now, after discussing it and thinking about it a little more, I'll come up to like a 50, 55. But I'm not convinced that I'm going to watch this movie again. I'm not convinced that it's one of those classics that I'm going to like show my kids, you know, like, it's like, I think about, unless my child is also doing a podcast about movies from 1989, I probably
that'd be a twist.
Sit down and like be like, let's watch Weekend at Bernie's. I would pick another one first.
You might be surprised just how many movies you run through with your kids.
Well,
I am not exaggerating. I'm not. Everyone's gonna think I'm lying when I say this, but and also that I'm the world's worst parent. But it was my wife who did this. My son, my 9-year-old son, 2 nights ago watched Parasite. So that's where we are.
I have to admit, I think I'm going to be one of those people who does what my parents did, and we just rewatch the same, you know, old raggedy VHS tapes for 10 years. But so anyway, I think I started at like a 40, and I'm going to come out with like a 55 because I
55. I like that.
It's iconic. I love the look and the style of it. I love how ballsy it was. I did take note of that when I watched it, and I appreciate the just balls to the wall slapstick bullshit that goes on in this movie. And I want to do it. I'm jealous that Andrew McCarthy got to just trip his way through an entire film. And
can I also just say that I think similar to Kenny and Danielle and I, this film is not available for rent. So you own Weekend at Bernie's. So you might
I own it.
Weekend at Bernie's again.
Maybe I'll have to.
This will be a raggedy old VHS for me.
All right, Danielle. This was all you puppet mastered this. Where do you land on this before the podcast and after?
How high? I remember it was different in the past. How high can I go? Because podcast like it was.
You go to 99 if you want.
I can go to 99 still. I didn't know since this was 89.
We're trying to keep it uniform.
Trying to keep it the same.
Trying to keep it uniform.
Yep.
Okay. So I started at a 99.
Best.
Danielle, I love you.
I love this movie. Sadly, I feel like after this podcast, I'm maybe like a 95 because you guys pointed out some stuff that I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work.
I love it so much. I love you saying 99, Barrett just hiding. Literally just being like, I don't understand. It's phenomenal.
Because I also know that, like, I get it's got issues. I understand that some things are definitely wrong with it. But every time I watch it, I'm like, I want to play this movie in the background of a party I'm having and try to be like, let's have as much fun as they're having with the
You're one of my favorite people for that rating of Weekend at Bernie's. Let's just remember, you've been on for 3 episodes. You've been on for The Bone Collector, for obviously Broke Down Palace, and for this. And Weekend at Bernie's has lapped both of those films in your
much better movie.
Weekend at Bernie's wasn't trying to be anything but funny. Like,
no,
I get the other movies are like, you have to rip them apart. If you're going to be a drama about some intense stuff, I'm going to be critiquing it. But this made me laugh. It had heart. It was stupid. It was all those things. It was just like, it was in the Hamptons Bay, and they were all having fun.
Hamptons Island, Hamptons Island, Well, I hope to see you guys all.
Done this from Hamptons Island.
I was just gonna say, I hope we can all go to Hamptons Island someday together.
Yeah.
I think that would be tremendous. But more than anything, thank you both for coming on, and we hope that you'll come back again to talk about. We have another film that we've talked about doing together, so we're gonna do it. My guess is it's Bats. Indeed, they're doing a Bats motion right now. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and suggest that I think Bats is gonna be the weakest of these.
Never know. You never
Bats
know.
could surprise us, and I look.
Can't be worse than Broke Down Palace.
Yeah, you really didn't like Broke Down Palace. I remember you really didn't like that movie.
I really don't. But I would do anything with you guys.
And also, I would say
carry us through.
But Barrett also turned us around on Tea with Mussolini. That was another turnaround movie.
That's a good movie.
That is a good movie. But we didn't come into that podcast thinking it was a great movie.
No.
Barrett convinced us of its greatness. So, thank you so much, guys, for being on and coming back. And we look forward to talking about Bats with you someday very soon.
But honestly, Danielle. What? Turning Barrett around on Weekend at Bernie's is a far greater achievement than her turning us around on Tea with Mussolini.
I think that's true, actually.
Yes. We got Barrett from a not recommending to recommending.
I could see the disdain on her face when she walked into this podcast.
Yes.
I could see her throw the gauntlet down and say, I challenge you to make me not turn this podcast off. And she walked away saying, I guess I would recommend it.
And you may have convinced me, actually, to watch Weekend at Bernie's too, just to see what happened.
We're going to watch it together.
Oh, yes.
I wouldn't choose to do it any other way.
So when you guys watch Weekend at Bernie's 2 together, will you please take a photo of yourselves?
Together? No, the 4 of us is what you meant,
all 4
obviously.
of us. Oh, great.
Obviously.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
I'm taking that invite.
I've never seen it, so I'm excited.
I'm snatching that invite.
Love it.
All right. So get vaxxed.
Thank you so much. What?
All of you out there, get vaxxed.
Get vaxxed. Get vaccinated. Everybody.
You can watch Weekend at Bernie's with us.
And watch Station 19. Thank you so much, guys.
Goodbye, listeners.
Goodbye. Stop recording.
Podcast like it. You want a podcast like it? 1999.